Hello, my name is Makayla. I've had Chiari been diagnosed since about 2014. I live here in Ohio. I have a gym here. My whole life is fitness and health, so I'm really excited about this to share my journey because it's been a pretty long one. But I'll go over a little bit about my story and then we'll kind of dive into different movements and fundamentals of fitness. So I was diagnosed after a concussion. I got a concussion. I was in and out of the hospital. And about 2 months after, I started passing out. So that was a little bit of a journey. I went to like a cardiologist, did all this stuff, and then finally I got some scans, and we found that I had Chiari malformation type 1. Since the decompression surgery, I haven't had really any problems at all other than some symptoms here and there. Passing out is completely gone, so that is awesome. So that's a little bit about my story. We'll kind of go into her story and then we'll kind of go back and forth.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now.
Yeah.
I am having a bit of a struggle hearing, but if you guys can hear me, thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Makayla just shared her story, a little bit about my story. I was diagnosed with Chiari malformation in 2017. I had been overweight most of my life, and so I tried to work out, but I wasn't consistent with it. And but when I got diagnosed, I had just started getting into the rhythm of working out more consistently. And actually, my mother has Chiari malformation, but as so many women of that generation, they weren't really allowed to show their feelings or express their pains or have those kinds of conversations with their kids. Their moms and parents in general were just up and running, especially in my household. So we never really discussed her condition. So I was familiar with the term, but I didn't know for sure what it was until it affected me in my life and I was experiencing that pain. So in 2017, I was diagnosed, and at least my mom was able to say, well, I have that too. And we were able to share that in common, though, again, she didn't really discuss those symptoms. So it was almost as if I was like brand new with this. Shortly after, I had a severe searing going from my cervical spine into my thoracic spine. And so I had to have emergency surgery. So I was decompressed shortly after diagnosis, but my symptoms came fast and furiously, though that did not stop me and my journey. I was actually preparing for a fitness competition with the WBFF right when I was diagnosed. And after decompression, I started to pretty much relearn my body, learn what worked for me, learn what my triggers were. And then I just took the workouts that I was prescribed and I just modified them based off of what I was feeling. Because my mom had Chiari malformation, but we didn't discuss our symptoms. And a lot of the time, her symptoms were very different from mine and my triggers. And I find with other people who have Chiari malformation, their triggers are different. We may share symptoms, but their triggers are different. So I had to really learn my body. And so when I did, I was able to apply what I learned for myself and modify whatever workout I was trying to do, just modify it. And then I just got the hang of modifying it. And that's just how I kept going and going. And then a year after decompression, I competed with the WBFF. It was like a year to the day of when I had surgery, and I was able to compete within the transformation category. And it was a really great experience. And then from there, it was just more learning, more modifying, more growing, but definitely not stopping. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about my story.
Wow.
Yay, awesome. So also to add in a little bit about me, I actually also competed almost directly 1 year after my decompression. I actually broke a junior world record in powerlifting, deadlifting as a junior. So I just want to talk about that just to say, like, don't give up. A lot of people that I see even normal people without Chiari, they kind of get into it and they kind of do a lot of things the wrong way, and then they leave the fitness world. So that's a really big part of it. So the first thing that we're going to go over is some of the safest fundamental exercises for Chiarians. And the way that I kind of want to explain this is that safest is kind of different for everybody, but I kind of go back to the basics for everybody. And that doesn't mean that just because somebody has Chiari, it doesn't mean that they can't do the basics. And it just might mean that we need different progressions. So squatting, body weight, push-pull exercises, learning the hip hinge, doing all of these with good posture, having your neck back, not super rounded forward, having an open chest, all of that stuff is very, very important. So those are the safest things that you can start with. One of the things that I have a lot of my clients that have pain start with is simply by walking. If you can walk without pain, you're in good shape. Not everybody can do so, unfortunately, but that is a really big thing. So walking 10 minutes at a time, walking after you eat, starting there, really focusing on walking properly with a good gait, using your core, learning those things are really important in breathing. Learning how to do glute bridges and lunges are really important as well for the fundamentals. Those are all the things that I incorporate. After that, what I go to is different progressions. So then learning how to squat single-legged, learning how to do the different things in different progressions. So that's kind of how I structure my training for everybody. And that's what I really want to point out is that just because you have Chiari, it doesn't mean that you can't do these things. You just might have to do it a little bit differently.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. And just to touch on what Makayla was saying, it's so true. The way that I structure my workouts with clients who have Chiari and the general population, it's exactly the same. So you start with these foundational movements, and it's funny because even with general population, I find myself having to modify with them as well, because all bodies are different. They're all unique. We all have different levels of functioning. So I always start off with establishing a base, and then we move from there and we modify as necessary. I love what Makayla said, like, we're just like everybody else. We have to apply the same rules, just everybody else. You know, we just got to change things up. So we don't stop, we don't get discouraged. We just do what works for us in our body. So some of the best exercises that I use to avoid pain, or anything that let's talk about exercises that maybe that can be a little bit of a trigger. So shoulder, like overhead presses, bearing weight and then bringing that weight up above your head, that might be a trigger for some folks. So what I suggest is to start slow. Like Makayla said, it's very important to have your chest nice and open, your posture upright, your core correct, and your chin. It's always good for your chin to be tucked, especially for us Chiarians. And if you're starting with weight, start nice and slow and just get used to that range of motion. But I don't like to come from a perspective of what exercises to avoid pain, because everybody's pain is a little bit different. If it's causing you pain, you modify it. But if you're going to do any exercises that involve your upper body, I suggest performing the movements first and really connecting your mind to your muscle. And really, it's so mental. Think about the muscle that you're working and work it. You don't need, whether you're lifting 5 pounds, 10 pounds, or no weight at all. You're just getting used to that movement. Once you're used to that movement and you feel okay and you're not getting any triggers, you can add a little bit of weight. Start small. You know, we don't have to ego lift. You just start small. And a great tool, resistance bands. Resistance bands, especially for upper body, especially for shoulder work, always do the trick and you always get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go with your overhead presses, any type of overhead work for me personally as well, that's like a major trigger. I have never been able to really do, especially like barbell presses, anything like that, that's always been a huge trigger for me. Sometimes even bench pressing, even though I competed with squat, bench, and deadlift, sometimes benching, like depending on my pain level that day or my symptoms that day, I just sometimes just take them completely out. And that's like another big thing on the pain portion of this is that you have to go day by day with Chiari. I've gone months with no symptoms, and then all of a sudden it just hits me whenever the weather comes or the weather changes and things like that. And that's something that should be really pointed out here in this pain part is that every day is going to be different. So sometimes it's hard to follow an exact plan without knowing modifications because you might go in and you have to do something completely different. And sometimes you might have to do nothing at all and just relax and do yoga because sometimes when you're in pain, the nervous system is just already angry and you're not going to recover and it's just going to go downhill from there. So knowing your pain levels and understanding the balance between that is super duper important.
Absolutely. And man, there was something that you had mentioned. So it's just one of those other, it's just something else. It's like, yeah, we share similar symptoms, but I sometimes can be triggered doing overhead presses. And this is why I mentioned overhead presses because it's very specific. So when I'm doing overhead presses, I don't get triggered all the time. But I think that what was really important is when I started my exercise program pretty much right after surgery, like right after post-op, I started super, super small. It's so important to learn your body first. Learn what your specific triggers are, learn what movements, and then you modify from there. So where Makayla can't do an overhead press, or that is not that you can't, but it's a trigger, it might not be a trigger for me, but I had to learn that. So regardless of what your exercise program is, you got to learn your body. You've got to start small. And another thing that helps me, especially with my pain and with squats, because I know some Chiarians that have some trouble with squats. When you're bearing down, right, when you have a bar, even if you don't have any weight, it's so important to breathe. Do not hold your breath. That can be a major trigger for people who have Chiari malformation. You will pass out. Like you will pass out, you will get a migraine. You've got to breathe. You've got to make sure that your chest is nice and open. Again, keep your chin down when you're performing. This is general form stuff. Like this is what you should do when you're performing all sorts of movements. Try and keep your chin tucked. Your chest is nice and open and you're breathing. You're constantly breathing. Do not hold your breath while you're bearing weight. Like that's a major way to avoid pain is to continue to breathe.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing that we're going to kind of talk about is overall flexibility, strength, cardio, and all of that. So I just first want to talk about flexibility and how important it is. One of the things I always say is lengthen before you strengthen. If you do not have full range of motion in something, it's really hard to strengthen without causing dysfunctions elsewhere in the body. That is pretty important. So that might be somewhere that you might start if you're brand new to the fitness world and you want to start incorporating things, is just learning how to breathe and stretch. That is super duper important. And the second thing is cardio. You don't want to go too hard at cardio. For me, like there's an exercise bike where you're kind of like this. That is horrible for me and my Chiari symptoms. So learning how to walk properly and then maybe increasing that into an incline and then going from that and just doing different progressions to that is like super important. And for overall strength, that is also important to do in progressions. You don't want to go into the gym and try to go as heavy as you can on day one. You really want to start with high rep and low weight. And from there, you want to increase. And that's really important. And what's also important is learning what your goals are, because there's different rep ranges for different goals. If your goal is to maintain your physique, then you don't necessarily need to go in and lift super heavy every single day. If your goal is to lose weight or just kind of learn more about your body, you have to adjust different rep ranges according to that. So that's something that I really wanted to go over, because I feel like a lot of people, they go to the gym and they take pride in being sore the next day. And that's not really my approach to things, because that's, your nervous system, you're not recovering, or you have to adjust different things and not rush into it all.
Can you guys still hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, good point with establishing your goals. Yeah, because your programming is going to look completely different with what your goals are. And just, so I wanted to kind of touch on how much can we lift? How much can we lift versus how much can anybody else in general population lift, or what's safe to lift for us? Again, it's all about what your goals are and what's safe to lift. My safe to lift is going to be different than yours. So you have to establish what your triggers are, learn your body. I would say it's not really important, and I say this to my clients all the time, it's not important how much you lift. Again, with the ego lift, what's most important, and you can get the most out of your muscle, is time under tension, right? So even if you're using your body weight, the longer your muscle is engaged, you're working your muscle. So if your form is right, if you're watching your form and you're doing a exercise that you are familiar with, or you're starting to get familiar with it, which is what you should begin with, right? Make sure that the time that you're exerting that muscle is a little longer than just performing the movement to get it over with. Like that ego lift. Like, we don't need to do that. You'll get more out of your muscle if you work on your tempo and you're nice and slow. So generally what I do with all my clients, what I do with my clients who have Chiari, I like to pause at the top of the movement. So let's do our shoulder press, because that's what we've been talking about, right? We come back to it because this is the scary one. 1, 2, 3 here. 1, 2, 3 down. See, you have time to breathe. You have time to think about what you're doing. And most importantly, you're thinking about your muscles. So you have that mind to muscle connection, and that time that's taking you to come up, you're working. And that's enough. You don't got to pick up a huge dumbbell and throw it over your head. That's irresponsible for anybody. So the thing to do is always to concentrate on keeping your time, the tension in your muscle as long as you can. And you're going to get that workout in. You're going to work your muscle.
Yeah, so the safest way to incorporate all this stuff into a program is just honestly going with your body and how you feel and your symptoms, and also either researching yourself what you need to do or hiring somebody. So back to when I first started lifting, I was a athlete my entire life. I was a soccer player. I worked out with a coach right when I turned 14. His name was Justin. I kind of worked with him, and then I had my decompression. He didn't know much about Chiari. Actually, I don't even think he knew anything. It's kind of like, I'll research it and see what I can do. But really, it was just him teaching me different progressions. Like, on this day, if you have symptoms and you can't do this, and you need to do this. And having somebody that took the time to research those things really helped me the most. I went to physical therapy. That's really, really, really important after the decompression, to learn how to activate your muscles, learn how to stabilize your muscles. That's actually the fundamentals. After that is when I think it's safe to incorporate the training, because you already have the basics down that you need every single day to move. Every single day, when you're walking, when you're cooking your food, when you're doing your laundry, learning the things that you did in PT are very, very important. So after that, incorporating a program that another trainer either takes the time to research, or you take the time, and just going slow and making sure that you have communication back and forth, because you can't, if you hire somebody, you can't expect them to read your symptoms or understand kind of what's going on with your body for that day. There's a lot of different things online about strengthening, but really it just depends on your goals and what you need to do.
Yes. And it's everything that, it's so funny because when we're in this world and everything that Makayla's saying, I can just bounce right back us. It's so true. You have to start with all these fundamental, like you have to know your base. But the safest way to incorporate a program, again, it's going to be different for each person, but you have to get the basics down. You have to work on your form. You have to make sure that your breathing is right. You have to make sure that you can, and I totally agree, especially if you have Chiari, it's important to reach out to a professional. There's no shame in that. And also there's no shame in starting small. I know Makayla was an athlete. And I'm an athlete too. And so it's frustrating when I feel like there's something that I can't do. The safest way to incorporate a program is to do what's safe for you. So there's no shame in starting small, even as an athlete. If you're having a symptomatic day, it's okay to use your body weight. It's okay. You're gonna work, creating that mind to muscle connection and having that time under tension. You're still working on your muscle endurance. You're still working on your muscle strength. And when you start with no weight, then body weight, then heavier weight, you become more confident in your body, more confident in your symptoms, more confident in your trigger. What's going to happen? You're going to progress. You're going to be able to lift a little bit heavier safely, and you're going to trust yourself enough to do so. So much of this fitness journey is mental. A lot of it is emotional. We get so frustrated when we feel like there are things that we can't do. That's why I don't like that perspective of what exercises can you not do as someone with Chiari. My response, I can do anything because I make anything work. I make it work for me. And that's the approach that I take with my clients, especially my clients with Chiari, because it can get frustrating and it can get disheartening. And what happens? Then you quit. But that's not just not just our population. The general population is the same as well. So that's just how I'd like to start that. Always know your triggers, know your body, trust yourself. You start with all of the movements that are foundational, that are going to get you to where you need to go safely, and you modify accordingly. There's no shame in starting small. There's no shame in no weights. That's what I see all the time here. Everybody wants to throw weights around. You don't need to do that. The most important thing is knowing your body, time under tension, building that muscle endurance, and then it will come in progression. This is what we do with all clients, not just Chiarians.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the mindset thing, that is probably where everybody that is interested in fitness is where everybody should really start. Because one of the big breakthrough moments, that aha moment, is when you no longer let Chiari define you. So I actually will tell this quick story. I pen paled when I first got Chiari. My parents found this random person. I think she's like from Texas. I actually still have all of her notes, but she had just started Chiari CrossFit, and she just got diagnosed with Chiari. And we were kind of both getting we were actually in the hospital at the same time. It was pretty cool. But what was really cool about that is we kind of learned that don't let it define you at that moment, because she would kind of like, some days she just couldn't get out of bed, and the next day and I'm like, listen, you just can't let it define you, and you can't get so upset about it, because if you get upset about it, it's just this whole entire process. And you have to just keep going forward. You have to take it day by day and make sure that you're, one, not letting it define you, and two, making sure that you're not comparing your journey to anybody else's but your own. We all can do progressions the same, and everybody, even without Chiari, have similar routines and things that we need to do for the fitness journey. But what we can't do is compare and kind of get distracted by everybody else, because we are unique in a lot of different ways. And sometimes we just need to chill out. So just taking it back and starting that you can't let it define you, that's the huge breakthrough right there.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So much of our work is about mindset. It's all about perspective. It's so easy to get discouraged. It's so easy to get frustrated. But again, it's not just a Chiari thing. It's not just us that wake up some days and we feel awful. You know what I'm saying? Everybody feels this way. Yeah, we feel it, it's bad sometimes. It get real bad, but it's all about perspective. Maybe today it's going to be a little bit of a challenging day, but tomorrow it's going to be better. It's going to be better. You just got to keep getting there, keep showing up, keep learning, and especially learn yourself, learn your body, learn your triggers. Because as Makayla said so beautifully, this is your journey. Your journey is not going to look like someone else. Even me and Makayla have completely different journeys, completely different aesthetic, completely different everything. And we both have Chiari, and that's what connects us. But, right, our journeys are going to be different, and that's okay. And there's beauty in that. There's grace in that. And there's so much strength in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another cool thing that everybody can do that has Chiari or post decompression, whatever it may be, is to journal everything. When you're at the gym, symptoms before the gym, symptoms after the gym. That is something like I have an app that I use to coach all of my clients, and it has everything. You can track everything. And that is super duper important, because you might forget if something bothers your head, or you might forget different things like that. And that's really important, because pain is data. Pain tells us that there is a problem. And as a trainer, I kind of know, if my client is having pain but didn't have pain before they went to the gym, then we need to address something that they did, either with bad form, they did it too quickly or something like that, that we need to kind of fix that and address it. So pain is data. Make sure you guys journal everything. I carry a little baby notebook with me. If I don't have it with me, I just put it in my phone. So that's a really huge part in learning different progressions for you and things that might bother you and your symptoms.
Makayla, that was such a good point. It's fun. Makayla and I had conversation prior to this, and that was something we were both like, wow, journaling changed everything. It really did, because as she said, it's so hard to pinpoint, oh, well, what was the trigger? What was I doing? And so in addition to journaling your workouts, and we missed this too, journal your nutrition. Now, that is such a huge part of everybody's fitness journey, but this specifically to people with Chiari, people struggling with those symptoms. My symptoms get when I eat foods that cause inflammation. I can't perform at the gym because my symptoms come fast and they stay, and the duration of the symptoms or the flare up is a lot longer. And so of course, then that affects my workouts. But I find that my lifts are better, my flexibility is better, my clarity is better when I'm eating foods that do not cause inflammation and that are not high in acid. So a lot of my foods are whole foods. They are not, I don't touch processed foods. I try my very best to stay away from wine and sugary foods. That will absolutely affect not just your fitness journey, but your Chiari journey and how it relates to fitness. It really does. Nutrition and documenting your nutrition and journaling your nutrition changes the game, just like journaling what your triggers are. And just journaling in general is a great tool, not just for workouts, not just for nutrition, but also how does the weather affect you? And then you'll start to notice significant patterns. You'll start to notice patterns in your nutrition as it relates to your symptoms. And of course, that affects your fitness. I mean, it's funny. I keep saying it's funny. It's not funny. It's awful sometimes. But our symptoms affect how we work out. All of these things affect general population as well. If you're not journaling your food, like your progress will likely plateau, or you might not see much. So all of these things that affect the general population have to be applied to us as well. And we just make it work. So I guess all of that was to say, journal. It's an amazing tool, and you got to make it work for you. Everything that happens to us, we can relate it to general population as well. And that is how you can see progress and document your progress in the gym and when you're eating and when you're moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So also another tip that I kind of want to give you guys is listen to your doctor. When I had my decompression, my doctor gave me the basics, like don't lift more than a gallon of milk. She told me to journal everything. She was like, you need to keep a journal of all your symptoms. And I was really young. I know everybody's different, but I was pretty young. So I thought it was all like like, I was like, what is this going to do for me? Fast forward to a couple years when I became a professional and kind of became a trainer and became a therapist and things like that, I realized how important it was. So you guys should just really listen to your doctor, journal everything. It's super duper important. Don't be like me, because that's something that I look back and I'm like, wow, what could I have done if I would have done this sooner? Same thing with physical therapy. So when I was told to go to physical therapy, I'm like, man, I'm an athlete. I was like, I don't need to do that. You know, I'm strong, I can use my core, and I didn't listen to anything. So then when I started training, I'm like, why can't I do this stuff? And it was because I didn't journal my symptoms. I didn't know what had bothered me before I even started training. I didn't know how to activate my core. I didn't know how to use my glutes. So then I was just in pain. So really listen to your doctor, listen to your physical therapist, take it seriously, because when it comes to actually changing and transforming your life through fitness, you're going to need all of those habits, and you're also going to need all of that direction in order to be the foundation to start your program.
Okay.
Your experience with your doctor, Makayla, was different than mine. My doctor told me, oh, well, my neurosurgeon, don't ever lift anything more than 30 pounds. And even to this day, I think about it, because I even got my decompressive surgery so that I can have the kind of life that I wanted to lead. And so, yes, 100%. Listen to your doctors. I'll never give advice against that, but also listen to your body. Trust your body. Your body has ways of telling you when things don't feel quite right and when they don't. Journaling is a great tool because it's right in front of you. You're able to document and take data on and recognize patterns. And then also you can mirror that with how your body is feeling. Listen to yourself. Sometimes people, well-meaning people, sometimes doctors too, will tell you, don't do this, you can't do that, you know. Listen to your body. Listen to your body, trust yourself, and take all of what you've learned and run that through your own process, and you know, then apply that accordingly is my advice. Because if I would have just listened, then, you know, I wouldn't be, you know, squatting 200 plus pounds right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. That was amazing. And Makayla too. That was inspiring.